Hi. This is the time of year, it's January when I'm recording and publishing this video, when people think a lot about goals. Now, I find goals to be, let's just say, problematic, and I've developed a framework for achievement that I like a lot better and that my clients like better, and I hope you'll find it helpful as well. I was actually inspired to create this video because of a comment I heard on a podcast recently that I found really interesting. Reaching a goal is the penalty for setting one. Now that, to say the least, that's counterintuitive, but I had to think about it for a while, but after thinking about it, I've decided, yeah, I agree. And I'll explain why. But first, just in case this is the first video of mine that you've watched, let me introduce myself. I'm Grace Judson, self-proclaimed leadership geek. My focus is on helping first-time managers learn the important skills of leadership because the skills that got them to that point of being promoted, the skills that made them successful as an individual team member, they are not the skills that will help them be successful going forward as leaders. Individual contribution versus leadership are two very different things. So if that sounds like you, someone figuring out this people leadership thing, or if you know someone that sounds like, by all means check out the resources I've linked to in the video description below, and of course all the other videos on this channel. Okay, onward. Why do I feel this way about the traditional approach, we'll say, to goals? Too often I have seen teams and individuals, myself included, set a goal and then fail to reach it. If we take the classic example of a sales team, back in my corporate days, I would see the anxiety rise in the salespeople as the end of the quarter got closer and their sales targets hadn't been met yet. And I'd see them increase the pressure on themselves and on their potential clients, the clients that they were trying to encourage across the finish line. And I'd see the ways that they pointed fingers at everyone in sight to try to explain why they hadn't met the goal. On the flip side, if they did reach the quarterly goal, then everyone breathed a big sigh of relief and relaxed. Now, I had to wonder how much further might have they gone if that goal hadn't been there. And I still wonder this when I see people achieving goals. They may be great goals, but how much further might we all have gone? And I'm not advocating for hustle culture here. That's not my point. Bear with me. So I see this in my clients, and as I said, I see it in myself as well. My clients want to set goals, for instance, to get a promotion. And if they don't get that promotion within the time frame they think they should, then they're discouraged, they start doubting themselves, their self-esteem and confidence take a hit, and it just all around turns into a struggle. I think you can probably relate. I think we've all had the experience of setting a goal and not getting there, missing it. Now, you may be thinking, but what about the time-honored traditional format of the SMART goal, the specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound goal? I have no problem with that format. It's a good format, but where I differ from traditional thinking is that I would call that a project, not a goal. A project has specific objectives, outcomes that we want to reach that are measurable, that we know we can achieve, that we hope at least are relevant to what we want to do, and that has a defined set of milestones and an end point when the deliverable, the outcome, is complete. That's a project. And I'll add that all too many goals, by the way, whether for ourselves personally or professionally or for teams and organizations, aren't actually well defined in this way. They aren't, the SMART definition, especially from the perspective of whether or not they're achievable. The whole go big or go home and BHAG, the big, hairy, audacious goal, are, in my mind, invitations to hustle culture, like I said, or to ultimate disappointment. Now, look, if goals work for you, then go you and go for it. As a friend of mine often says, we are all an experiment of one, so anything I suggest is entirely up to whether or not it works for you. But if you've had that experience of being disappointed, or perhaps of feeling that you're not setting goals that are audacious enough, Stick with me because I'm about to explain my alternative framework. It starts with aspirations. Aspirations are open-ended desires about what you want to achieve. I'd like to be CEO of a company someday, for instance. We want to open up our sales to new markets, or I want to be more physically active as a personal aspiration. Notice that there's no what I call a lid on these. That's what I call that experience in the traditional mode of goal setting where you reach the goal and then stop. You hit the lid instead of going on to see what more you might be able to do. And there's also no end date because that's part of the lid, right? And that aspect of the lid is what creates gloom and discouragement if you don't get there by the date you decided on, the date you thought you should. So that's aspirations. Now, in order to move along the path toward our aspirations, we need projects. I've already defined that I think the project is that thing that we can look at as being specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, right? A project within the aspiration to becoming a CEO someday might be to get an MBA. Or it could be to talk to your manager and find out what the next step is within your organization to be promoted. Or it might be to find a mentor or hire a coach and so on. I think you get the point, and these do need to be carefully defined, making sure that they are, again, specific, that you can measure your progress, know when you've completed it, it's clearly something you can do, it's attainable, that it's relevant to your aspiration, and that you have a time frame for completing it. Okay, next, within any project we have tasks. Tasks break down what you need to do to complete the project into specific steps. These are usually things you can complete in a few hours or at most a few days. There's one more piece to this framework, and that is habits. Habits are the things we do to move closer to our aspiration, but they're not part of a project. For instance, in the aspiration to be more physically active, we might, after, let's say, a research project to find out what activities work best for us and what's available to us, we might then have a habit of going to the gym or running or walking the dog and so on. Again, these don't fit into projects, but they are still necessary for continuing to move us toward that aspiration. So, there you have it. My framework for achieving things that are important to us or are important to our employers that don't set us up for disappointment and discouragement, or, on the flip side, for limiting our potential achievement. Aspirations that have projects, that have tasks, that create habits. Now, I don't expect you to be able to change how your employer handles goal setting and evaluation relative to goals. But I would encourage you to consider this reframing, this new framework for yourself personally and for your team if you have the flexibility to do that within your company. And I know for me and for many of my clients, this framework is a huge relief. It takes away the looming pressure of not reaching a goal and opens up excitement and curiosity about what projects and habits you can put in place to move closer to your aspiration. What possibilities are open to you? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I know this is a little controversial. And of course, please let me know if anything needs clarification or if you have questions. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you know when I release a new video. In the meantime, go forth and aspire to do great things.